Hey everybody, welcome. These are some of the most the best things to do. I love uh, doing these live so much. Um, so we'll wait for some people to jump in here. Yeah, but so just anyone that doesn't know who I am, Nick Licamelli. I'm the team's injury reduction and management specialist. I'm a physical therapist. I work with 3DMJ. I've been working with 3DMJ since 2018, and yeah, I work with their athletes, sometimes the coaches if they get hurt, but not really. It is one of my proudest roles and accomplishments that I've uh, kind of got in my life to wear this shirt. And I know anyone else that wears this logo and this name feels that same pride. So yeah, it's an honor to be here truly. And yeah, I am a business owner. I own an outpatient orthopedic physical therapy office. I'm a partner in the practice, and yeah, you work with mostly general population, but also some athletes. And yeah, so welcome everybody, and I am looking forward to the next hour and in an hour or so. Hey guys, hey, some familiar faces. What's the best way to cure sciatica? Good question. So, sciatica in the leg, gotcha. Sciatica is kind of a big umbrella term for any time the nerves that go into your leg are irritated. So, if you imagine, so you have your spinal cord that runs in between. So, say your spine is kind of like a stack of toilet paper. And then the hole that goes down the middle is kind of like where your spinal cord runs. Not a perfect analogy, but it's good enough. And at each level, so at each level of the toilet paper, you have nerves that branch out of that spinal cord. And in the lower back, they branch out of those levels, and then they come to join into what's called the sciatic nerve. And this thing is literally like a garden hose. Like it's big, and it runs down the back of the leg, like through the butt area, like the glute area. Then it branches off into the hamstring area, and it branches off into like the calf area, and then it's kind of branches kind of go down into the foot as well. So what sciatica is when that's irritated. Could be irritated for a couple reasons. Not always anatomically. It's not always the fact that something is pressing on it that's causing that. If in a perfect world, we would get an MRI and we would see a disc kind of pushing out into the nerve, and it would coincide perfectly with the symptom presentation. Unfortunately, that's not always the case. We can have MRIs that show herniated discs, nerve entrapments, and sometimes not have any symptoms. And conversely, we can also have someone who has ripping pain down their leg and also have no issues on an MRI. So MRIs are not the greatest way to diagnose things like this, but that just kind of goes into what I was saying, how it could be many different reasons why someone may be presenting with what seems like sciatica. Um, so yeah, anytime the nerve gets irritated, think of like if you are uh, sitting on like a park bench or something, and your hand falls asleep. That's nerve irritation, nerve inflammation, but just in the short term, and then it kind of lets up. So sciatica is that kind of like prolonged irritation of that nerve. It can get pretty bad. So in the most severe cases, you can get weakness, numbness, tingling, and of course pain all the way down to the foot. When it gets really bad and really chronic, you can get what's called a foot drop. And a foot drop is when you are unable to dorsiflex or pull your foot upward. Um, so pointing your foot, like doing a heel raise, would be plantar flexion, and the opposite of that would be dorsiflexion. So you lose the ability to dorsiflex your foot. That's really problematic because in order to walk, you have to dorsiflex your foot so you don't scrape your toes on the ground. So that's really, really something that you want to avoid. If you are getting any symptoms into your foot that's causing weakness, you want to get that checked out. Um, in the most severe cases, sometimes you need a brace to correct that, because the longer that nerves are irritated, the harder it is to get those symptoms out. So if you are having symptoms all the way down to your foot and it's presenting as actual weakness, like you're not able to move your foot quite as much, that I would call a red flag, and you got to get that checked out by a healthcare provider. That's not the majority, though. Majority of the time, it's some kind of intermittent nerve irritation from any of the multifactorial. Hey, it's been 5 minutes and 40 seconds, and until I said multifactorial, I think that's a record. Blood flow restriction training, and that is another record. I didn't mention either of those until under 6 minutes. So nice job, Nick. Um, the symptoms can be from anything that can cause pain, right? Stress, sleep, hydration, nutrition, change in routine, whether it be in the gym or outside of the gym. Um, uh, anything that can cause pain can pretty much cause that area to get pretty sensitive. The treatment is it took me this long to get to your answer. The treatment depends on the person, obviously. So, for example, if someone's goal was to get back to, I don't know, let's say weightlifting, right? Maybe they have pain in the back of the leg after they squat, or even maybe during a squat, they're getting that kind of radiating pain down to the leg. Um, One of the things that's really good for sciatica is walking. Now that depends on the person. Let me explain, because if someone is walking 20,000 steps a day, they commute into a city, and then at work they're walking around all day long, and then they walk back to the bus, and then take the bus, and then they go take the kids to soccer practice, and they're the coach, and they're running up and down the field. That person, I probably wouldn't recommend walking to help with their symptoms. I wouldn't recommend sitting to help with their symptoms and just kind of pulling back a bit. But for most people that have a minimal to moderate activity level, walking is an excellent way to work through the sciatic symptoms. And you would grade that and progress that just like anything else. You can use time. So try walking for 5 minutes. If the symptoms come on at 5 minutes, then we stop, take a break, sit down. If you're in a park, if there's a bench somewhere, um, and then you would do that over and over. So you can kind of push that limit to the edge of discomfort, so that window gets wider and wider and wider, and then before you know it, ideally, you would have a longer walking tolerance. Some simple exercises and stretches, things like something like a child's pose, where you're on your knees and you sit back onto your heels and your arms are forward on the floor, and you get a nice stretch in your lower back. You kind of let it round in the lower back. That could be a good exercise. A piriformis stretch can be a good exercise. These are kind of like non-specific approaches to sciatica. So if you think of like two columns of treatment, you could think to calm it down and build it up. Calm it down is if this thing is really sensitive and really pissed off, we're going to lean more into these kind of stretches like child's pose and stuff like that. Modifications in the gym. Build it up is going to be like pushing the step count, um, loading it in the gym. Like those things are going to be build it up. So you got to see where you are on that spectrum. And if you are more in the, we need to calm this thing down first. It's like a hot engine. We can't really do much with it yet. Then you want to calm it down first. And again, things like the stretching, meditation, deep breathing, um, ice, heat, acupuncture, whatever, cupping, like whatever kind of short-term pain relief you can use it. Let's calm it down by any means, and then let's build it up after that. So I hope that helped. I'm trying to think if I forgot anything about sciatica that I want to mention. Any loss of bowel and bladder control is a definite trip to the doctor. That could be a real red flag. But most of these things resolve on their own with time. That's what the research shows us about back pain and radiculopathy, as it's called, or sciatica. Most of it resolves on its own with some movement and exercise. Um, there was something else. Oh, the distance that it travels down is important too. So if it is like I mentioned earlier, down by your foot, you probably want to get that checked out by someone. If it's just like in your glute area and back of your leg, then you can probably deal with it with some of these strategies that we're talking about. The other thing, I'm glad I remember this. This was the thing I wanted to mention. Sometimes, and then I promise we'll get to other questions. Sometimes you'll feel the sensation of tightness in the back of the leg, and you may feel like it's a tight hamstring, and just everything in you wants to just stretch that hamstring because it feels tight and stiff. Um, you just may want to hold off on hamstring stretching, because what can happen is you can actually just be stretching your sciatic nerve, because your sciatic nerve runs right kind of through your hamstrings. So that's the last thing you want to do. You don't want to go tugging on a pissed off sciatic nerve um, when we're trying to calm it down. So, one way to figure out if that tightness is your hamstring or if it's your sciatic nerve would be to get in the position of a hamstring stretch. So stand and prop your leg up on a chair or something. And you're going to dorsiflex your foot. So, like, pull your foot up and then do your hamstring stretch and bring your head, like your chin, down to your chest as you do that. And you'll feel a stretch in the back of your leg. Now, if you then lift your head up and you feel less tightness, we know, or we can be quite certain, that that's probably neural tension. That's probably your nerve tension that you're feeling the tightness. Because if you, when you bend your head forward, you're stretching the spinal cord up in your neck. And if you pull your foot up and get in that hamstring stretch, you're stretching it down below. So you're kind of stretching the whole nerve system. But then if you lift your head up and keep your head straight, now you're putting it on slack up here. So there's not so much of that tension down below. So if you lift that head up and there's less tension, that means that it's probably the nerve that you're feeling. If you lift your head up and if the stretch feels the same, maybe it's your hamstring, um, because the hamstring has no connections to your neck. So movement of your neck shouldn't affect the tightness in your hamstring if it is muscular. But just to stay on the safe side, don't stretch your hamstrings if you have these kind of symptoms. Even if we can be sure that it was your hamstring that you're stretching, what is a hamstring stretch really going to do to help with this? Probably not much. But good question. All right, let's see. All right, John, how would you advise problem solving when having pain free workouts, but then aching shoulders the next day? Exercise selection or volume first? Have history of shoulder injuries, torn labrum. Okay, that's a great question. Um, excuse me. I have this Miley Cyrus voice going on right now. I don't know what it is. I feel fine. Maybe it's allergies or something. I never had allergies until I hit 30. So I don't know if anyone else can relate. I used to be made of iron and never had any kind of allergies. And my brother too. And then yeah, we both started getting like symptoms of allergies when the weather starts changing. But anyway, so pain-free workouts. That's a great thing, because I know it's frustrating and it makes it difficult to kind of like diagnose and modify around the pain, because you don't know what's causing it. Because so if you had pain while you were training and you had pain as you were benching, let's say, I can ask you a bunch of questions and you can probably give me good answers. I can say, okay, does it hurt at the bottom of the bench? Does it hurt at the top of the bench? Is range of motion seem to be like the thing that triggers it? Is load the thing that triggers it? Like, can is it just with heavy weights, or is it just with light weights, or is it more of a proximity to failure type thing? No, the weight doesn't matter, but once you take it to the house, then you start to feel it. All those questions can be answered if you're getting pain in the gym. If you're not getting pain, if you're not getting pain, not paid, if you're not getting pain in the gym, that makes that diagnostic process harder. But you're in a better place if you're having pain-free training, because that means that this thing is not so flared up. It means you're addressing it at the right time. The fact that you're able to train and you have soreness afterwards, um, that means that that it's not super like sensitive and inflamed that you can't do your training. Um, so what I usually do with that kind of with that kind of example is I look at volume first, just because the accumulation of volume load tends to be that reason why it kind of flares up later, but not necessarily. It could also be any of the other things. It could be just taking them to failure too much, and then your body just isn't really recovering afterwards. It could be a load thing, right? Probably not a range of motion thing, just because those are usually like in the moment. Like, if you're getting pain in your back at the bottom of a squat, you pretty much know that that's where you're feeling it. But that kind of pain afterwards, usually, if it's a range of motion thing, you wouldn't have pain free full range of motion and then have pain afterwards. So I would look to volume first. I don't know the program that you're running, but if you follow 3DMJ, I'm sure it's pretty intelligently structured. So if you're not doing tons of volume, then maybe consider RPE. Trying to keep a bit away from failure. Maybe just the overall intensity load at the end of the workout is a bit much. But look to volume first. If that's in check and that's good, then look to proximity to failure, and then I would look to load. Maybe we lighten the loads and do a bit higher reps, still pushing it close to failure, or maybe you switch the movements up after that. Okay, so I would try load, proximity to failure, and then try changing the movements, load, and then you can kind of be your own little detective once you get to that point. If you want to dive in more specifically, you can reach out, please, and we could definitely kind of dive in and figure that out. So I should have mentioned that in the beginning. I do virtual consults. So if anyone has any questions that you want to dive into more specifically, please reach out to me through any of the platforms, through 3DMJ or my Instagram or however you could get to me. All right. Okay. Follow up on the sciatic thing. Would a massage gun in certain areas of the back or leg help? Maybe a tennis ball or a lacrosse ball? I would say that it could. So massage gun to parts of the back, that could be definitely in the calm it down bucket. Um, but I don't know that the massage gun has to be a specific target. As long as you're not doing it on your actual spine, like if you feel your spine, like the bones of your spine. You want to stick to like both sides of it. You don't want to go jamming like the joints. So yeah, totally fine. The judge is going to be how it feels after. Sometimes people get massages and things are more sensitive afterward. So they'll use the massage gun or get a professional massage, and the next 2 days the thing is just flared up even more. That would let me know that that wasn't a good idea. But there's nothing wrong with trying it. The lacrosse ball and tennis ball, I would say no. I would say a hard no to those kind of things for this area of the body. Um, because if you roll your glute or your piriformis muscle with a lacrosse ball, the problem with that is that lacrosse ball is so small that when you sit on that, it's gonna dig real deep, and you have skin, fat, muscle, your glute muscle, and then you have your tinier glute muscles, then you have your piriformis, then you have your sciatic nerve. That lacrosse ball is gonna go right through all those and just jam that sciatic nerve. So, if this nerve is irritated, you don't wanna go smashing it with a lacrosse ball. If you like that self myofascial release type stuff, I would say go with a foam roller or a PVC pipe just because it's bigger. There's a bigger surface area. So you can sit on a foam roller and roll that back and forth like on your glute area, and you'll get that effect that you want, but you just won't be jamming into your sciatic nerve. Um, and those kind of things are the massage gun. Like it's probably more of a non-specific systemic effect, especially if you're getting it done professionally by someone. Just the act of lying down and having someone um, do something to you in a relaxing environment, that will help reduce overall muscle tone and some symptoms. So don't worry about if you're hitting the right level of your back, as long as you're not jamming your kidneys or jamming your joints of your spine, you're good to go. So try that out. Lose the lacrosse ball and the tennis ball and try a foam roller instead. And the rule, I guess the guiding principle would be if it feels better afterwards or if it feels worse afterwards. If it feels worse, maybe hold off on that stuff. If it feels better, then keep leaning into it. All right. Ryan Shaw, thank you for the question. What about medial and lateral epicondylitis? Excuse me. Epicondylitis, golfer's elbow and tennis elbow. So, to get real nerdy, it's we've kind of moved away from um, epicondylitis because what we used to think was it was more of a like a tendonitis, like an inflammation that was causing the pain. But as of recent, we've kind of found that it's not. And these things that last for months usually aren't from inflammation. A tendonitis usually is just short lived. It could be just a couple days. But if it's lingering, then it's not really defined like an itis, like an inflammation of anymore. So what they call it now is tendinopathy. I couldn't possibly care less what they call it. The only reason I'm saying that is just so we have an understanding of the foundation of what this condition is. So it's not so much an inflammatory issue. It's just a sensitive area, just like any other area. But it could be nasty. It could be very nasty. So what I would suggest is um, well, it obviously depends, right? It depends on your goals. It depends on your life outside of the gym, your life in the gym. What is usually recommended? Number one, let's figure out what's provoking it. So, if carrying groceries is provoking it, if opening doors is provoking it, if holding your child is provoking it, try to do it with the other arm. Simple thing, but a lot of times people don't think like excuse me, let's just change up the way we do things. So just try that. Try seeing what aggravates it and what doesn't, and then those aggravating factors, just try modifying in your daily activities. In the gym, what I've found to be helpful um, are things like grip assistance. So and I'll use myself as an example just to kind of make it more tangible. When my first daughter was born, I developed this nasty. I still have it, like it's still there if I don't be careful. Well, because I have another daughter, so I never really got a break from carrying bags and babies and stuff. But anyway, when my first daughter was born, um, like the tattoo that Eric has on his chest. He's got what is it called? Is it Milo? Not Milo. Oh gosh, I'm sorry. The guy who's holding the bull on his shoulders. I was gonna wear the uh the rascal shirt or the Iron Culture shirt. But I didn't. I wore my 3DMJ shirt instead. But anyway, the guy who's got the bull on his back, the story goes that he carried the calf every day, and then as the calf got bigger, he got stronger, and through progressive overload, now he's carrying a bull on his shoulders. That wasn't the case with me and my growing daughter. My daughter got bigger and bigger, and my arms got more painful and more painful. So yeah, basically what happened was um, I was carrying her a lot in my right arm. I'm lefty, so I would hold her and I would do things. I would eat. I would write. I would I don't know, clean things. But I would have her in my right arm, like a little football. So that increased from zero to a lot when she was born, and carrying bags, diaper bags, and stuff like that. And then in my job, I'm using my hands all the time as a physical therapist. And then my training too. I'm using my hands and my grip and my elbows. So I developed some medial elbow pain, so pain on the inside of my elbow. It got to the point where I couldn't open my refrigerator door because I went to grab it and I just felt like a stabbing pain in my elbow. And that's when I realized I better start putting some of my knowledge to myself here because this is not good anymore. So what I did was I number one modified my activities outside of the gym. I held my daughter in the other arm. I consciously didn't lift things with my right arm. That is definitely in that calm it down basket, like we're talking about, right? Um, in the gym, I used grip assistance. So I would have these like metal hooks that go on the inside of your hand, and then it velcros around your wrist. And I would use that for Romanian deadlifts, pull-ups, rows, and that helped tremendously because I was able to just kind of relax my grip and just let my arm do the motion, not so much tensing up my wrist, my grip. That helped a ton. If and it started feeling better, and I just rode that out for a couple weeks. I still use the grips on pull-ups and rows and Romanian deadlifts just because it doesn't limit me at all. Like I'm a bodybuilder by nature, so I don't have to grip things without, I'm not a power lifter. Where I'm going to have to step on the platform and just pick up a bar with my bare hands. So I don't mind using the grips. Like I'm not in a rush to lose the grips. But now I'm carrying my kids in both arms and using my right arm totally fine, no limitations. If that wasn't the case, if things weren't getting better, you could also look to purchase. They're like very cheap, under $10, I think, on Amazon. It's like a splint. So it goes like this, and there's a metal piece that comes and sits just like this in your hand. And what that does is it prevents this from happening. I would recommend it to wear it at nighttime. So the splint goes like this, so that when you're sleeping, your wrist is in neutral throughout the whole night. Um, One of the things that some of us do when we sleep is we kind of go like this, right? Not a problem, but that's just a constant low level contraction of these muscles that we're trying to calm down. If you think of it um, like a big like a ticker or like something that's like filling up a big tube, and up here is where symptoms start to be felt. Um, Something like sleeping like that at nighttime, while it may not be painful in the moment, you could think of it like you're filling up your tube of sensitivity, and then you wake up and your tube is here, and then you go to like open the door to go into the bathroom, and that goes to here, and then you go to turn the faucet and it goes to here. Then you leave the house and grab your backpack or briefcase, and then bang, you're like over that line, and you get that sharp pain in your elbow. But if we can do something like wear that splint at nighttime, then we're starting the day down here. And then you go to open that door and then go do this. And then you take a break and you're on the bus and you're not using your wrist. And then you do something else and then it kind of falls back down. So just a simple little tool that you can use to calm it down in that calm it down basket. The build it up basket. The thing with 30MJ followers when it comes to stuff like this is that you're already doing most of it as far as the build it up goes. The more of a general population patient would have to get on some kind of resistance exercise. So, not only like wrist specific things, like yes, some wrist strengthening could be good with like little dumbbells and stuff like that, um, and some grip strengthening, like even just rolling up a towel and just squeezing a towel, holding it for 5 seconds with like a 50 to 75% effort, not like trying to crush it. 50 to 75% effort, slowly ramp up and then slowly ramp down and just kind of feel where your symptoms are at. That's a great exercise to kind of build it up. And also, just like a progressive shoulder and bicep tricep routine is fantastic for tennis elbow and golfer's elbow. Um, but like I said, most of us that are here are going to be doing some variation of those things. So I would try some of those thoughts that I kind of threw out there that worked for me, and other things in the calm it down basket, like we talked about earlier, ice, heat, acupuncture, like that, those kind of things, cupping, like have at it. Um, Anything that can help in the short term to kind of reduce that sensitivity to allow you to train and allow you to load it. But they can be stubborn. I know they can be stubborn. And again, if you want to get in any specifics, please feel free to reach out, and I'd be more than happy to help. All right. Kira, should I avoid hack squats and squats with bulging S1? Any spinal loading at all? Doing McGill Big Three and other core work for rehab. Okay, cool. Um, I would say that if you had an MRI that showed a bulging disc, it's not really a guiding tool, um, because everyone is so different when it comes to what we see on an MRI versus what we see in person or in the gym or in the clinic. Um, so a bulging disc is not really a diagnosis; it's more of just something that we see. So different than if you were diagnosed with some kind of, I don't know, like an infection or something. They have a very specific test that can test for the infection. They get the very specific, like, bacteria that's causing the infection. And then they have a protocol for that with certain antibiotics to help with that. I don't know if that's how it works, but in my mind, that's a better example of um, a diagnostic tool, which gives an answer, which guides our treatment, which then has the evidence-based treatment for that specific thing. Definitely not the case with things like bulging discs. That being said, so what do we do? What do we do, and what do we avoid? Um, we don't really know. It's going to depend on you. So I've had people who have bulging discs in that area, and hack squats feel great, and regular squats don't. I've had people with same issues, and it's the reverse. Hack squats hurt, and regular squats feel great. So I would say give them both a shot and kind of explore the movements a bit. See if any of them have cause pain. If you're completely pain free, don't even think about your disc, because it's quite normal to see those things on MRIs. Majority of people who are asymptomatic have some kind of disc bulge on an MRI. So if you're feeling good and you don't have pain, don't even think about it. Just keep training. I wouldn't say there's anything you should do or shouldn't do just because of what that MRI showed. Um, so be your own detective. If you do have pain during any of those, just kind of see like when it hurts, throughout the movement. Like if you can notice any trends, like whether it's a load thing or a proximity to failure type thing, and just approach it like any other kind of pain. I obviously want to rule out red flags. So like we talked about with the sciatic conversation, if you're getting pain down your leg, numbness, tingling, stuff like that, you definitely want to get that checked out. Um, and so yeah, spinal loading is totally fine, and I would recommend loading the spine if you have any kind of pain in your back. We have to just load it the right way, in an intelligent way. Um, and the I guess excuse me, one way to think about it, um, is imagine you see a spider like in your bed or something, and you grab the spider and like you take it out of your bed. But now you're like, oh my God, is there a family of spiders living in my bedroom? So you start to like uncover the sheets, and you're like, oh my God, oh my God, oh my God, oh my God, oh my God. Okay, good, nothing. And then the next sheet's like, okay, good, nothing. And then you're like, oh God, I check the pillow now. And you look at your pillow and you're like, oh my God, like you're just like on edge. Your shoulders are all tight and you're trying. But then as you do that more and more, every time you go to move something and don't see a spider, that sensitivity will decrease and you're not going to be quite on edge. And then by the time you're done looking through the whole bedroom, you can move on to the next room and you probably won't be quite as tense, and you can just lift stuff up. Oh, nothing down there, nothing over there. But initially, that was pretty sensitive and uncomfortable. Think of your pain in the same way. Um, you don't want to avoid the thing. Like you don't want to not look for the spiders, because you have to do that, right? That's part of who you are. It's part of what you want to do. You want to have a bedroom that you feel comfortable and safe in, just like loading and training is what you want to do. So you have to lean into that stuff, but in a way that will just that will gradually expose you to it. So if someone walked in and were like, "Oh, stop being such a baby," and just like ripped everything off the bed, that may be too much too soon. You're just like, "Ah, like I think I feel it on my shoulder," and that would kind of push you away from your goal. That would be like just smashing squats and not worrying about the pain that you have, and like just keep pushing through, pushing through. That would be like that. But finding ways to modify the movement, load your spine, but just in a modified way and a gradually progressive way, that is how you will get that movement desensitized to spinal loading, is through spinal loading. The McGill Big Three, I think those are fantastic for the calm it down basket. I don't think there's anything too special about those. I think if someone has back pain and they stumble upon Stu McGill, I think they're going to be moving in the right direction. I think there may be, I don't really know his stuff too well, but there's nothing magical about those exercises, but they're good for most. So if they feel good and they're not that time consuming and you feel better after doing them, keep doing them. Year of the Cat, thank you so much on the sciatica question. Much appreciated. My pleasure, man. Thank you for always coming to these lives. I appreciate it. All right. Let's see. Okay. Mevo. Hi, Nick. I somehow only feel my bicep curls in my shoulder. I tried all kinds of different curls and I just keep getting the feeling in my left shoulder. Right side is normal. Cool. Okay. Interesting. Not the first time I've heard that. Um, if the right side is normal, then your technique is probably okay. Like if you're doing the same thing on both sides and the one side feels different, it's probably not your technique. What I would say is you may want to try some kind of uh, like make sure you're really trying to get a mind muscle connection to that muscle. Sometimes we're just asymmetrical and you feel things more on one side than the other. Um, you can also try some BFR. What BFR will do is it will put all of the burn and the stress on the bicep. Um, it likely will completely remove any sensation you feel in your shoulders and really anywhere else in your body, and just put all of your focus on that bicep muscle belly, just by nature of the modality. So that could be a nice little way to almost like warm up. So you can do your straight sets with BFR on both arms. I would suggest. I don't think you have to just do the one side, um, and then that will really make you feel your bicep on that side. You can do it at straight sets, like for your working sets, or just do like two warm up sets, like an acclimation set almost with the BFR, and that could help kind of focus the feeling on that bicep. I would say give that a shot. If there's any weakness, like if you're noticing that you're dropping things in your hand, if you have to use a 20-pound dumbbell in the left arm and you're using 40s in the right, then I would say we should get that checked out, because that could be you don't want any like nerve compressions in your neck that are causing you weakness down your arm, that's causing this kind of difference from side to side. Doesn't sound like it. It sounds like it could just be that side. It's just different for you than the right side. But yeah, so if there's any weakness, get it checked out. Otherwise, you could try some BFR and see if that helps. Explore different rep ranges. Try some higher rep sets, lower rep sets. I think you mentioned you tried different movements, um, different curls. Yeah, keep trying different variations. If you have any ones that you didn't try yet, like obviously preacher curls, incline curls, like on an incline bench, high cable curls, uh hammer curls, like everything, supinating grip. So start with a hammer curl grip with a dumbbell and then supinate at the top, or like midway when you get to 90 degrees, like turn that palm up and really squeeze, and then when it comes down, end in a hammer curl position. That could be a great way to connect with your bicep too, so give those a shot. All right, let's see. Fossil Fusions. Hey, Nick. How's off season going, and when are you planning to get on stage again? I appreciate the question. Off season is going well. I am. Let's see. So my on stage this. So I competed in 2022. So last year, my last show was the Mr. America in October. So I'm not at a year yet from my last show. Feels like it's been forever though. But yeah, just about coming up on a year since my last show. Off season's going well. I cut a bunch of volume out that I was doing. I knew better, but I just didn't want to change anything during the prep. So after the prep, Jeff and I took out some volume. So now I'm just doing basically 3 sets of everything. Um, and my weight. So I stepped on stage at 140 pounds, which is up from my previous stage weight. So I think the previous stage weight was, gosh, in like my lowest of all time was 128.8. That was crazy. Talk about just over dieted, just kept competing. I was shredded, but I just looked like a marathon runner with striations everywhere. Managed to grab a pro card, which was my goal at the time, but that's a whole nother conversation. So that was my lowest stage weight. And then this most recent time, I was about 141 pounds on stage, and much better look for me. And so right now I am about 160 to 165, and it's where I like to hang out around. I did get up to like 175, right? Not right after the show, but like, so October was the last show. January, February, I was probably about 173, 175, and I just didn't like the way that I looked. My face was kind of like, I don't know, looked just big, and like I just wasn't feeling great about the way that I looked. I probably was just a step over beach lean, but for me, I just didn't like the look. I have my my girls at home, and I like being, I like feeling good about the way that I look. So I pulled things back a little bit. So basically, after my show, I just had my refeed day every day. That's just what I did after my show, and I cut out all not natural step count. And so then what I did, I just pulled back a little bit. Just pulled the reins back. Didn't feel restricted at all because I was eating a lot of food for me. And then I'm hanging out around 162 to 164 right now, and I feel good. I'm not shredded, but I'm fairly lean, and I feel great. Don't feel restricted. My training is going well. My main thing is sleep. I have to just prioritize my sleep a bit more, but with the kids and the businesses and different things like that, it's just a phase of my life when certain things take priority over others. But I look forward to prioritizing my sleep moving forward. And yeah, when am I going to compete next? Definitely not next year. Um, it's not that I can't. Like I'm not one of those competitors that really is burnt out after a prep. Um, my problem is I can keep prepping. That's my problem. I'm sure some of you can relate to that, like that just drive to just keep grinding and grinding. So with Jeff helping me, Jeff was coaching me. Obviously, Jeff is the perfect coach for someone like that because he'll pull them back and snap them back into reality and let them realize that that's not best for their goals. So I'm not going to compete in 2024, maybe 2025, maybe in 2025. So we'll see. But yeah, no urgency. Like I'm good. The thing is the step count. That was the thing that got me. Like I can eat a piece of broccoli a day and be fine. Um, it was the sleep deprivation because my daughters at the time last year were like, my youngest was like 1, I think. Yeah. So that was tough. Like we'd be up late, up early, like training in my basement, and then my daughter would wake up. So I would go scoop her up and go for a 40-minute walk to get my steps in, go to work, come home, and take another 40-minute walk. Like the steps were the worst part because there's no like, at the end of the day, it's just minutes. Like, it just takes minutes in the day to get the steps in. So, I may have to supplement the step count with something. I could talk to Jeff about that. Maybe some high intensity stuff. Like, I would rather do that if it will save me just minutes throughout the day. But yeah, thanks for the question. All right. Bob Smith, any thoughts on a 15-year-old trainee? 15-year-old. Okay. Um, so not someone who's been training for 15 years. This is a 15-year-old. A 15-year-old trainee. Yeah. Okay. 15-year-old trainee, competitive wrestler, chronically tight hamstrings, low back is overdeveloped, reduced volume to one heavy leg day, body weight movements every once in a while. Every workout, I'm sorry. Um, are you the coach? Are you coaching the kid, or is it you? Are you the 15-year-old? If you are the 15-year-old, nice job because you are going places. If you're listening to 3DMJ at 15, gosh, I wish I did. Um, so chronically tight hamstrings, I would not care one bit about. From this moment on, don't ever care about it after this moment. Um, there's no such thing as tight hamstrings because there's no standard or norm of how tight hamstrings should or shouldn't be. Everyone's different. Some people have less flexibility than others. Not anything to worry about. A lot of that could be genetic, activities that they do that they get adapted to. Um, a gymnast who can do a split is no less likely to get hurt than a tight wrestler that can't do a split. Someone with tight hamstrings is no more likely to get hurt than someone with flexible hamstrings. And sometimes it's even the reverse. Sometimes too much flexibility is not a good thing either. But we don't have norms for that stuff. We definitely don't have evidence that shows us that flexibility is related to pain development. So don't worry about his hamstrings or your hamstrings if it's you. Lower back is overdeveloped. I'm not sure what you mean. What do you mean by that, overdeveloped? Let me know what just a little clarification on that. Reduce volume to one heavy leg day and body weight movements every workout. So how has that been? Does he have pain? Uh, doesn't look like he has pain. If he doesn't have pain, then don't worry about it. Just train him how you would usually train him, or train yourself how your coach is asking you to train. If he does have pain, then I think reducing volume is a fair option. But then see if that helps. If it doesn't help, then we could always try something else. We could try reducing proximity to failure. We could try with someone who's 15 and is a competitive wrestler. You want to have the conversation uh, that the overall load, meaning mental and physical. So, is he cutting weight for wrestling? Is he stressed about the foods he's eating? Is he getting overworked? Is he starting school and there's stress with school? Is he trying to talk to girls at 15 years old and he's stressed out about seeing Sarah in the hallway between second and third period? Is he going to practice after school and going 100% on the mats? Then going home and having, French fries for dinner and staying up on his phone all night until 12:30 early in the morning, and then he wakes up and does it all again. So with someone that in that age, you really want to make sure that they're prioritizing sleep, nutrition, hydration, stress management, and remember that they're a kid. So they have to make sure that they're still being a kid. Um, I've seen that time and time again with high level gymnasts, figure skaters, um, these kind of just overworking these kids and not prioritizing sleep and recovery and nutrition, stress management, mental and physical. Um, That is huge for someone like that. So just make sure that you're paying attention to those things too. All right. All right. John, do you agree with those who say the scapula should move freely during the bench press, or should people stay retracted and depressed? Hmm. I didn't know that was a thing. Um, but what I guess my thoughts would be to, I would say, pin them down during a bench, because the point of a bench press is not to train your shoulder through a full range of motion. The point of the bench press is to train your chest. And I would think that you want a nice stable base pressing into the bench. Also, I'm pretty sure that like power lifters pin their scaps down. And I mean, that's the ultimate weightlifter, right? So if someone, if the strongest people on the face of the earth pin their scaps down during a bench, I would probably do that too. I personally do that. It just feels more stable. I definitely would not pin your scapulae down in other movements. So any other movement, let those things move. Overhead press, let them elevate, let them come down. Um, Lateral raise, let them rise up, let them come down. So if you think of your scaps on your back like this, um, when you go to move your arm, it has to rotate up like this. So if you try to pin that down and then you go to move your arm, your scap's going to stay here and your arm bone is just going to articulate in there, but it only has a certain degree of freedom in the socket. It has to go, but the scapula also has to move with it so that you get that full fluid range of motion. So one of the mistakes that I made early on was I wanted to reduce my upper trap involvement in a lateral raise. So I didn't want to impinge my shoulder, right, by shrugging my shoulder. So I would pin my shoulder down, look in the mirror, and really like depress my scapula and like just try to come up with just my deltoid, um, which is kind of silly, right? Because that's like saying I want to squat, but I don't want my glutes to be involved. I just want my quads involved. Like the beauty of the squat is that it's going to train your quads and glutes. The lateral raise is a great exercise, but you want your trap to work too. Um, your shoulder's going to get the work, your deltoid is going to get the work, but you want your upper trap to do what it has to do. So lateral raise, think yes, let it slide, let it go back and forth. Overhead press, let it move. Don't pin them down if you're doing an overhead press. Um, Arm training, same thing. I would pretty much let them take their path that they want to take. While we're on the scapula, scapular dyskinesis is a term that some of you may have heard of. Forget that term that some of you may have heard of. It is something that we used to think was a thing, and there's just been tons and tons of studies that have just really made us realize that it's not something that we should be concerned with. Everyone's scapula moves differently. It will do its thing, and it's hard to measure because all we have is a subjective view of how someone's shoulder is moving, which is not good for repeatability and reliability and accuracy. So yeah, it's different. So if I look at the same shoulder every day for a week, I could possibly come up with 5 different uh, diagnoses that I see in this person. If 10 physical therapists watch one person move and then like write down what they think is going on, there's likely going to be a lot of variability in the conclusions that we come to. So the way that we measure the movement of the scapula is not accurate or reliable. Even if we could do that with good precision, we don't have the like protocol to treat something like that. So there have been studies where people have tried to change the mechanics of the scapula with specific exercises like lower trap exercises and different like prone exercises to try to get the lower trap to contract at certain times, middle trap to contract at certain times, and they were just unable to change the mechanics to the scapula with exercise or stretching. So, and the other point, so it's like a 3-point thing here, is that even if we could do those things, the movement of the scapula has not been shown to be correlated with pain. So, the even if so, number one, we can't diagnose it. Number two, even if we could diagnose it, we can't treat it. And then number three, even if we could diagnose it, could treat it, it doesn't really cause pain. So if anyone is kind of overly concerned about the scapula, don't be. Let it do its thing. But I like this question about pinning down on the bench or not. Yeah, I would say probably pin it down on the bench. Otherwise, let that scap free. Free the scaps. Should we get a T-shirt made that says "Free the Scapula"? I'm sure that exists somewhere. All right. Benjamin Alvarez, have you ever worked with any injuries in artistic male gymnasts? If so, do you have any strength standards on standing or seated calf raise for ankle injury reduction? Great question. Um, I've worked with a handful of gymnasts. I've worked with many, many figure skaters. Um, as far as I know, no, there is no strength standard for a standing or seated calf raise for ankle injury reduction. There may be, I may just not be familiar with it. Um, but yeah, I don't know. I don't think there is because it's really hard to predict stuff like that because of how multifactorial injury always is, right? Um, so I think strength, like a seated calf raise, for example, um, you, just practicing your craft will be protective. Um, I'm sure strengthening your gastroc and soleus will be helpful, but it's tough. It's tough to say because strength is one of those things where it's so specific, um, and specificity is king, right? So I would imagine that it's it's a good idea to strengthen those areas and strengthen your ankle with things that aren't necessarily specific to your craft. But I truly think that just spending more time doing the craft is probably the best injury reduction technique you can do. So to sum up my answer, I don't think there are any strength standards for that population for ankle injury reduction, but there may be, and I may just not know it. All right. All right, fossil fusions. When loading heavy on RDLs, can wrist straps be helpful to keep progressing as my wrist and grip keep giving before failure? Yeah, absolutely. I mentioned before I use those metal hooks for Romanian deadlifts. Um, I see nothing wrong with that. I think you have to look at the reason why you're doing the exercise. If you're doing a Romanian deadlift to get a stronger grip and train your hamstrings, I think you're probably getting like a half of an impact on both. I would recommend putting some wrist straps on, focusing on the hamstrings. Like literally, there could be a bomb that goes off in the gym. Focus on those hamstrings when you're doing those RDLs. And then if you want to train your grip with some isolated like wrist curls, wrist extensions, those like grip strengtheners on your off days or like after you train. That's what I'd recommend. So yeah, I would definitely use wrist straps if that's what's giving out before your hamstrings. All right. Benjamin Alvarez, if not, still curious to hear what you would recommend for anyone in a sport, hard landings or explosive jumps. um, for Achilles injury prevention. Yeah. So, similar to like the figure skaters and other gymnasts, um, actually figure skating, man, I've had quite a few figure skaters this past year that have come to me. Um, and that's a tough sport. Like concussions, like cuts, bruises, like the hours that they put in on the ice, just like gymnasts, I'm sure. Um, Really, I think a lot of not a lot of people really know what goes into those kind of sports, like gymnasts. Um, so for anyone with hard landings, it depends if someone is in pain already. So if they have pain, then that's going to be thrown into this kind of mix of my answer. If they don't have pain and we're just talking like how can we create the ultimate athlete, um, I would say you want to get some kind of periodization in the training. So you want the skill work. So you want to get on the ice. You want to get in the gym with the gymnastics on the mat, right? You definitely want that. But you also want to spend time doing strength training. So just things like squats, deadlifts, um, uh, pull downs, push ups, bench presses, stuff like that. You want to just build a strong athlete. And then you also want some agility and plyometric work. So I would definitely recommend um, some kind of way where all those things can get along because you don't want to just grind with the coach on the mat. And then you have the physical therapist working with them. And then you have the strength coach working with them. And they're all asking this athlete to do all these things. There needs to be communication between everybody. So maybe in competition season, maybe you pull back a little bit on the strengthening and some of the plyometric and agility stuff, and you focus more on the craft, right, and the skill work on the actual mat. But then if there's some kind of off season, which I think there should be, not an off season from training, an off season from competing, even if it's like 2 or 3 months out of the year where there's not any kind of competitions in the near future, then maybe you pull back on some of that skill work on the mat and you lean into more of the strengthening and you lean into more of the plyometrics and agility work. So I would say that you definitely want to, the main thing is you don't want all of those attributes being trained at the same time. You want to have some points when you push certain ones and some points when you pull other ones. As far as strength training goes, um, BFR is a great way to to strength train with those kind of in season athletes that perhaps may be having maybe experiencing a bit of like workload overload kind of because you're going to have less muscle damage using BFR, but you're going to get the same training effect. So that can help with recovery. If we do some BFR and they're strengthening in their strength training sessions, you can use a lightweight, they'll feel the burn, they'll get the same stimulus as a heavyweight, but not the muscle damage that we see with traditional strength training. So that was for Achilles injury prevention. Um, and if you have an Achilles injury, then you want to just kind of focus on that like any other injury. What makes it worse? What makes it better? You want to load it to its tolerance. And if it doesn't start to get better, then you may want to see a doctor to get some imaging done if there was like some kind of like pop or something that they felt. But yeah, if there is Achilles pain, just treat it like any other kind of pain. Load it as much as you can. Eccentrics are great too for that kind of thing. Lean into the same idea that we keep talking about, right? Like the calm it down, build it up. Calm it down. Things like massage, stretching, um, all that stuff. Electric stim, ice, heat, and then the build it up would be like the eccentrics, the isometrics, the loading of the tendon as much as it can. All right. Artzilla, is there a risk of disc herniation with the good morning exercise? I ask because I feel a lot of spinal compression in my thoracic spine when doing them. Should I stick to single leg deadlifts as far as a hip hinge goes? I'm sorry, stiff leg deadlifts. Excuse me. Um, There's no risk, no more risk of a disc herniation with a good morning than a stiff leg deadlift. Um, I would say choose whichever one feels better, whichever one has less discomfort, whichever one you can connect more with for your hamstrings. That's the one I would say to go with. But no, inherently, there's nothing wrong with a good morning. I I can easily see someone saying the opposite, saying that a stiff leg deadlift doesn't feel that great, and the good morning feels fantastic, and or vice versa, like you're saying. So I would say either one should be totally fine, but the nature of the exercises that wouldn't put you more at risk of injury or not. Okay. Mego, for athletes, is fruit as a primary carb source a bad idea? I say that because of fruit replenishing liver glycogen and not muscle glycogen. So that is probably not my area of expertise. That's a good question for some of the coaches. But what I would say, so this is my not expert opinion, but I guess experienced opinion of someone who follows people in the evidence-based fitness world. So, not my area of expertise. I don't know any research that I can cite, but as I understand it, the carb source probably doesn't matter, depending on what your goal is. If your goal is body composition, like you're training for a bodybuilding show, um, you probably can have any carb source as long as you're keeping track of your macros. Um, the only reason I would say that you want to focus on the source is if it doesn't sit well with you. So if you don't like the way you feel after you eat fruit, then don't eat fruit. If it like kind of sits in your stomach or something, or too much fiber and you don't like the way it feels, then don't eat it. Choose another source, or vice versa. If a bowl of oatmeal just kind of sits in your stomach after you eat it, maybe have an apple for pre-workout carb if you're gonna have a carb pre-workout. Um, but yeah, I would say there's nothing wrong with having fruit as a primary carb source if that's what you like and you're hitting your goals and you are enjoying it. Do you think that so this is Mevo? Do you think the Mike Menser statement that close grip, reverse grip pull downs is the best biceps exercise? Um, depends. Depends what the goal is. If the goal is to get better at a close grip, reverse grip, pull down, yes, that's the best exercise for that. If the goal is to build bigger biceps, it seems like you want to have a movement that puts the biceps in a lengthened position. That movement will not do that because you are so both heads of the biceps cross the shoulder joint and the elbow joint, right? So if you bring your arms up here for a pull down, you're putting it on slack here. It's on stretch by the elbow, but it's on slack here. So then when you pull down and you're like this now uh, it's contracted here, but you're still not getting in the stretch position, in the lengthened position. Something like a standing dumbbell curl or an incline dumbbell curl, you are going to have the shoulder in a bit of extension. So you're getting a stretch up here. And then you're also going to bring it back um, into elbow extension. So you're getting a stretch at the shoulder, a stretch at the elbow, and then you're contracting it up. So you're getting a full stretch of the muscle and a full contraction. Uh, so that's what I would say. I would say that that exercise probably isn't the greatest for hypertrophy, but we're really splitting hairs. If you feel good with that exercise and your nutrition is on, you're resting, you're recovering, you're progressing it over time, keep doing it. If it doesn't feel good to stretch your bicep in a lengthened position and you can't connect with your bicep and it just doesn't feel good, it feels uncomfortable, then that pull down variation is probably awesome. But if we're just looking at it as far as like optimal, then I would probably say you want to get some kind of exercise that gets closer to the fully lengthened position of the bicep. That doesn't mean every exercise you do has to have a lengthened position in it, but if you could, it's probably better to include them in there somewhere. All right. You know what? I came prepared with a cough drop. It's sugar free. Don't worry. I'm not going to mess up my off season macros. All right. God, it's been an hour already. We'll kind of go through a couple more. Artzilla, a follow up to John's question when performing bench presses, whether it's barbell, dumbbells, cable, is it better to use a narrow grip? I'm sorry. Is it better to use a narrow bench so scapular kinematics aren't restricted? I don't know. I think it may be better to have a bench that both of your scaps can sit on comfortably and stable and be stable. I feel like a narrow bench would not be a good thing, but I don't know. I don't know any research on that kind of thing. If I'm just using a power lifter as the ultimate bench presser, then I would probably say you want a bench that's able to hold your scaps on there. Kind of like looking at a race car and saying, okay, it's low to the ground, has wide tires, and has like one of those fan things like on the back on the tail. If you want to make a fast car, it probably should have some of those characteristics because that's the fastest car on the planet. Similar to my thoughts with the bench press. If the power lifters are doing it a certain way, we should probably mimic something that they do. But again, I don't really know. But it's a good follow up question to that conversation. Bob Smith, you're the coach. Awesome. I admire the fact that you're asking that question for your athlete. That's really cool. If you want to jump on a call, we totally can. Like we could have you, your athlete, and me on a call, and we can talk about some stuff. But I think the answer that I gave you before is can get you off to a good start. But excellent question, and thank you for taking that kind of care with a 15-year-old because you're setting him up for an excellent career in not only weightlifting but also in athletics. So I appreciate that. Thank you. All right, let's see. Okay, would love to know how should I train women pre and post and during menopause. Thoughts in general. Who should you follow? What studies are available for more information? I'm going to refer you to an Iron Culture episode where I think there's a couple of them that deal with women's health. That's probably the best place to go for that. My thoughts would be treat her like any other athlete. Monitor fatigue in the gym and outside the gym. But you're going to be using the same principles that you would with anyone else. You're going to be asking about stress, asking about overall feeling of recovery. If the lifts are not progressing, consider a deload or dive into some other factors that could be the reason why. And then as far as diet, I would treat it like anyone else as long as there are not specific dietary restrictions or anything lacking, like any kind of vitamins lacking that their doctor has mentioned or is giving them some kind of supplement or medication for. And I would also make sure that they understand that the scale will do all kinds of funny things. So maybe have other ways to measure progress other than body weight. Just because and again, this is not an area of my expertise, but as I understand it, as I understand it, the hormonal cocktail that goes on during those times can really cause weight to fluctuate day to day. Things like water retention and stuff like that. So make sure the athlete understands that from day one, the scale is going to have to be taken with a grain of salt. And if it's up 3 pounds one day, it's not that we did something wrong. Let's just ride this out, um, and make sure that they know that up front, and that will probably help. All right. All right, we'll do a few more here. Perfect. Oh, good. We're at the end. All right, cool. Jadar Jones. Hi, Dr. Nick. I have a problem with returning low back pain and inflammation. What do you think is needed in a training program to keep the low back strong and injury free? Great question. Um, I think what's important is that you are training, you're loading the spine and training with the movements that you want to train. Um, don't force yourself to do any movements that you don't feel comfortable doing. Recovery is going to be important, um, and overall workload management. So really nothing specific to the lower back. Um, yeah, if you don't have pain, don't think about your lower back. There aren't any exercises or stretches to prevent low back pain. If you do have pain, make sure we rule out red flags and go about it like anything else. See what provokes it, see what doesn't provoke it, see where you sit on the spectrum of calm it down or build it up. If it's really, really flared up, um, work on the calm it down. If it's not too flared up, work on the build it up with loading in the gym. Since it is returning, I would ask what causes it to return. So think back over the past year, and every time it came back, what was going on? What did the landscape look like? Any reason why it came back? And then, same thing, when it went away, why did it go away? What were some things that you tried? What worked? What didn't work? Answering those two questions could be really powerful because then they can help you moving forward and we can develop a plan of how to keep it away. But if it does come back, how to get it out very quickly. Um, the goal, I don't think, should be to be pain free. I think living on planet Earth and doing what we do in the gym, that is uh, pain is going to be a sensation that we feel from time to time. Now, you shouldn't be in debilitating pain all the time, but to be completely pain free for the rest of your life is probably not feasible and probably shouldn't be the goal. But if we can learn to manage these symptoms and see what makes it worse, see what makes it better, and if it does pop up, we have some tools to throw at it. All right. Would there be a reason to add sets if I'm making progress with 4 weekly sets? I would say no. Um, what is your? I guess it depends what the goal is too. If your goal is hypertrophy, you could probably ride that out until you can't. Um, I don't think there's a problem with doing the same thing for a month or 2 months. If you're seeing progress, training's going well, you're not in pain, keep doing it. Yeah, no need to change it. I think too many times we get caught up in the details of trying to progress everything and periodize everything. And um, this week we do this week this week this, and then deload. This week, then deload. And sometimes you just gotta train, right? If things are progressing and things are moving well and you feel good and the goal is hypertrophy and you're not trying to peak for like a powerlifting meet or something like that, then yeah, man, keep riding it out. Um, and if things don't start progressing, you could consider adding a set. You can consider taking a deload. Um, and yeah, but anywhere from 3 to 4 to 5 sets is probably reasonable. All right. Connor Blackburn. Hey Nick, how much do core exercises help manage disc stability? I guess that cough drop didn't work. Not that well. Core exercises. We don't know. Um, the core doesn't have a definition. They've done studies where they have kind of scanned the research to see what a definition of the core is, and we can't agree. And they've also done surveys where they ask professionals, physical therapists, athletic trainers, ask them to define the core, and majority of us have different answers. So that's the first issue with the core is we can't define it. So is it the diaphragm, the pelvic floor, and the abs? Possibly, but then the lats also connect down at the pelvis, and then you have other muscles like that. Your pecs like connect to your trunk too, right? So we don't have a definition, and uh, we do have evidence that shows us that if you take a group with back pain, um, if you take two groups of back pain, one group you put them on an exercise program with specific core exercises that work on like the multifidus and the transverse abdominis, um, and you also have the other group that just does walking. They just do like a progressive walking program. There's really no difference between the two groups in the end. So, not that the core exercises are detrimental, but it's probably just movement and load that is causing the improvements in pain. That's what the conclusion of those kind of studies should be. Not that core exercises don't work. It's just that movement is good for back pain. So I wouldn't suggest doing any isolated core exercises unless you like to do them. If you like doing them and it's not taking you away from your other training, keep doing them. They're not going to hurt. But there is no scientific evidence that shows us that doing core exercises like planks, different like bridge variations, side planks, bird dogs, those kind of things. Zero evidence that shows us that those things can manage like disc instability or anything like that, because your spine is not like a stack of blocks that's kind of like moving around. Your spine, if you were to be hit by a train and your body parts just like dispersed everywhere, what a way to end to end this life. Uh, the only things that would be intact are probably the joints of your spine and your pelvis and sacrum, just because those things are so secure with ligaments that just keep those things steady, because your spinal cord runs through it. So those things are not floating around like when you walk or jog or squat. If that happened, you would get a spinal cord injury and you'd be paralyzed from your waist down if that were the case. Those things are stable, they're not moving. The muscles around it are helping with dynamic stabilization, perhaps, but that thing is stable. That spine is stable. The discs are stable. So if you like doing core exercises, keep doing them. If you're doing them just for the fact that you think it will help your back, you could probably get rid of them because you're doing the other things that are more important. You are, again, you're a 3D MJ follower. You likely go to the gym. You likely train. You resistance train. May even do some cardio. Stay active with walking and hiking and stuff like that. You have it. You have all the important things that you're doing. If you didn't have those things, then I would say maybe we can start with some low level core exercises, because if that's all that your back can tolerate, we know it's not going to hurt us. So let's just start with some of those lower level things and then build up to the weightlifting, the hiking, the walking, stuff like that. You got to be a freak. Reverse diet, 50 or 100 calories. Um, hmm. I don't really know. I've done a reverse diet once, but then I discovered like 3DMJ. This was long time ago, but I did try a reverse diet. And it kind of gave me a little bias hug because, like I said before, I would just kind of keep grinding. So when the season was quote unquote over, I still felt like I was grinding and being tough and a bodybuilder by doing a reverse diet. But then my last few seasons, I've done more of a recovery diet where I get out of the deficit and just start cruising into the off season. So I don't really know how to answer that question about the reverse diet because I am more of a recovery diet type bodybuilder. I think I don't know who you would go to for that question. I don't know if anyone. I'm not really sure. Yeah, sorry. But okay, so we got every question. This was awesome. I really appreciate everyone's engagement, and these things are so much fun. If anyone else has any other questions, please feel free to comment below. I do read the comments and I get back to people. Um, Direct message me on Instagram, email me, or just get in touch with the team if you have any further questions or want to dive into anything specific. Thank you, everybody. Hope you enjoy the rest of your Sunday. Football is on. That's right. I hope everyone enjoys the games if you're watching. And yeah, I will see everyone real soon. All right. Bye.